clay will drink up the ambient humidity inside of that room. It will absorb that. And then, a few hours later when the wood stove is going and all the humidity is being cooked out of the room, that clay will actually release that moisture back out into the room. What the longevity of this, I had never heard, Terry, what you had said about dust gathering in permeable.
It takes a long time.
Yeah, and I don't know what the longevity of this this Hillybilly HVR system would be, but I think, just living with it, it can go a long ways to not having these spikes in humidity. It is a great modifying factor. University of Indiana, their engineering department did burn tests, fire tests on plastered straw bale walls, and they performed at 4 times what the code quantities were for a stick frame. They were 4 times, their burn rate was 4 times longer than a properly drywall stick frame house. So, they're definitely fire. They definitely got to use fire.
So if you have clay plaster in the inside of the house on straw or other surfaces, and if you get a lot of humidity in the house, does the clay sort of, in a sense, a bit etch out as you get a little, do you get a gradual stream of clay that you have to sort of sweep up and then it makes more dust in, or something?
Not in my experience. Now, I would love to try do a clay panel in a sauna, in a wet sauna, and really put it to the extreme test, and see. We're going to be building a sauna here in the near future, and I would love to know what the capabilities of good thick adobe plaster is to moderate that much moisture. Yeah.
I'd like to see somebody experiment with on the north wall of the greenhouse, using earth plasters to try to create a thermal mass on that side, and see if that will start to crumble after a while from the humidity.
Yeah, indeed. Zach, I don't know his last name.
He recommended against it, but I don't want to.
Yeah, I was just up at his greenhouse for that workshop, the Rocket Mass workshop up there, and yeah, he did earth bag with some sort of cementous plastic.
Because he didn't want it to get wet.
He didn't want to have that crumble thing that it's a legitimate question. I've certainly thought of it. And what is the ability?
Don't my house be dirty.
I think actually on the interior of houses, there's several layers. I did a little research a while back that you do your main, but then you do finer and finer coats, and so you actually create a finish that's more stable than what, like, say, would be on the outside.
And then I know in some cultures, in some parts of the world, they show a picture of these some people in Africa, and they had adobe type earthen houses and this, and they showed them putting in new layers. And every year they go and renew the plaster on the outside. So it's some places I guess you're managing or you're adding your.
Yeah, you bet. I've also seen I've got a book called I'm spacing out with the name. It's just a photo album about houses indigenous houses around the world. And there was
one shelter two.
Just a photo album. It's just photos. And there was a burnished adobe, and so they had taken like a rock or a stone or something like a spoon for a good visual, and had burnished this clay to where it was it looked like polished marble. I mean, it was incredible, and you wouldn't think a dusty wall finish by looking at that particular picture.
Comment about clay plasters on a straw wall.
Yeah.
If you have a high humidity situation, cooking fish or a shower or something like that, the clay wall will start to absorb the humidity, but the clay will also expand, and it'll seal the straw wall against it, so the humidity doesn't progress through the straw.
Yeah.
And there is a plaster product out there called Tanlite that you could actually plaster a shower with, and it is extremely resistant to water penetration, and it provides a really nice glossy finish.
Well, I know bentonite clay is what they line a pond with, and that that microscopic structure of clay, those platelets, like I say, they expand as they get wet, and waterproof.
Yeah, so that's, the clay plasters are actually a great preservative for a stone wall.
Yeah, indeed. Our original house has, I did cement plaster on the garage that I referred to. And there's just, it's hard to put into words. There is just something about an adobe plaster versus a concrete plaster. It's so much more warm. It's, and back in our bedroom, one of the newer additions that we have, we've got an adobe floor, and we also have concrete floors in the original structure. And just, you know, bare feet on a concrete floor versus bare feet on an adobe floor, there is no comparison. It's warmer, it's softer. That's the only word I can come up with. I mean, you can take your fingernail and you cannot scratch that adobe floor because I've got 3 layers of linseed oil on it, progressively thinned out. But yeah, there is something pretty special about wood use.
That was my question, is what did you finish it with, or how did you?
Yeah, 3 layers of linseed oil, progressively cut with mineral spirits. Yeah.
Scott, have you heard anything about like biology measuring the negative ions of materials? So like the biobiology of the negative ions of the concrete versus the clay. The clay's got to be much better, I think.
I haven't heard about that.
Didn't we hear about that from Mark Vandermeer, that clay is negative, has a negative charge to it, and that's why, because it's a crystalline structure.
Yeah.
That's correct.
And that very well could be putting a little bit of foundation to my waving my arms around in the air and saying there's just something about it. Because there is something about it. And I would love to know more from that aspect. This you can scratch, like over on the corner you can scratch, and you can get a little bit to dust up, but on regular, everyday usage of that, you're not, and you can also finish this with linseed oil. But a large amount of square footage, you're using a lot of linseed oil. So I don't know, there's a balance there.
How thick do you make that floor?
The floor actually was 4 inches of compacted gravel, like road base. It's kind of an angular stone.
Yeah.
We compacted that, and the adobe on that is only 3/4 of an inch thick.
Huh.
Yeah, it's pretty bizarre. And I know, Jason, you guys have an adobe floor. Do you have one up?
No, we don't have an adobe floor, but we did a light straw chicken coop, and we also did a concept we called chipcrete, where we mixed chip and clay together, and we put plaster over that, made out of the same material just from the foundation.
Yeah.
Just screened it real fine and put it on like plaster. And it's only about 1/2 inch thick.
Yeah.
And we did it in the fall, it weathered fine through the winter, and it looks like polished leather.
Yeah. Something when you guys were up at my place on that home tour, he said that he had done a floor that was thicker. He was surprised to hear 3/4 of an inch on a floor.
Yeah, just like a wall.
Okay.
That won't, well, that's a good, becomes a pretty solid tile.
I think it's the sub, it's the foundation that it's laid on. We really tamped the tar out of that road base.
So was that just clay and sand then?
Yeah, and I actually neglected this one ingredient to the plasters that I worked with is boiled flour paste. So you're basically making gravy. Boil a pot of water, add flour until it starts to thicken, stir it at a boil until the whole mix goes a bit translucent. Takes about, what does it take? 20 minutes, not even 20 minutes, like 10 minutes. Yeah. And then that acts as a binder, and then there's all kinds of binders. You mentioned manure earlier. Manure is I'm spacing out the technicalities of it. There's something about the protein in its fresh manure. Fresh manure makes the best adobe binder. People will use cactus, put cactus juice in as a binder. So there's all kinds of natural binders. I use this flour paste.
Did you have oil in that flour paste?
Oil?
Yeah, did you say something about oil? Boil it.
Boil.
Oil. Yeah, you're making gravy is what you're doing.
Or it's an oiled flour paste?
No, boiled.
Boiled,
Yeah.
oh.
Yeah.
Scott, did you also on top after the linseed?
I did, thank you. I used just a furniture wax on the top of that floor. And it's a beautiful floor. It reflects light very nicely, and like I said, it's a real pleasure to walk on. This is my wife, Jen.
How much space, how big a floor is it?
It's an interesting, the way we chose to do it, I did a timber grid, actually. And so the panels in the timber grid are about 6 feet by 6 feet. But I've seen pictures, and I know people do large expanses. And cold joints, you know what I mean by a cold joint? Like if you plastered half the wall and you had to wait a week and you come back, meeting up like dry and with wet, that can be a little bit of a challenge. That's one reason that I did these panels, because I knew I wouldn't get to it all at once. But I've read of other guys doing, and I have some cold joints on the walls in my house, and they are obvious. You can see them. Now, I've got theories of, well, if I went back with oil, that I could modify it with maybe the linseed. It's really glossy. Our floor is quite glossy. Yeah, that's when I did the wax. I did use a buffer with a cotton pad. The timbers are 6 inch by 4 inch, and they go down and set. I took large stones and placed them at each junction, at each crossroads of the timbers. And then packed the gravel underneath them and tried to fill in real solid with that gravel. There are ways to build without concrete. Of course, concrete's only so old. Yeah, for hundreds of thousands of years, people were doing it. And I've seen pictures like that too. It was a timber frame barn with a timber floor, and at each critical juncture, there's big stones, big field stones that big, where the timbers came down and rested on it. Moving down the list of permaculture concepts, if you will. Intensive systems in small areas. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Intensive systems in small areas. I think this is. I mean, I really think that this is a concept of scale and building. Don't build more house than you need. I worked a lot in Big Sky and Spanish Peaks and Jackson Hole, and you know, walking into the great rooms of some of those houses, it was like walking into a hotel lobby, and it was the opposite of homey. And small houses are easier to build, they're easier to heat, they're easier to cool, and they're easier to clean too. They are. Yeah, they're just more livable, period. Absolutely. There you go. Number 6, utilize and shape natural cycles. Utilize and shape natural cycles. I think that's really embodied in passive solar. Is everybody here fairly familiar with passive solar? You know, how passive solar as it relates to home building? It's a fairly straight. And I'm sure there's you could spend a lot of time talking about it, but the general concept is let the sun in the winter and keep it out in the summer.
So utilize and shape what?
Utilize and shape natural cycles. Microclimates created by the house. Earth cellars, cooling towers. Cooling towers probably aren't a priority for us in our climate. That's more of a Middle Eastern. Make your entry perform multiple functions. You know, entries as storage, entries as insulation. Have that double entry. Jerry, you call it an Alaskan entry? Arctic entry. Yeah, 2 doors. It's the mudroom concept, right? Essentially. The site-specific questions that come up are tough to answer, and even, I mean, I think the idea of looking through a plans book, you know, a house plan book, and saying, I like that house, now let's go look for a piece of property, is really a backwards way of looking at it, because integrating a house into its site, into the topography, the wind cycles, the sun, the seasons, that investment that you make in that is going to pay back. So to answer your question, there's a lot, I'm sure there's a lot of things you can do. Our house right now looks like this. This will be a cross section. So here's our original little 412 garage. And then our second addition, here's the sun over here. This is the south side. Our second addition came off like kind of a flat roof with a living roof here. When it came time to put this third addition on, my southern real estate was all taken up. And so what we ended up doing is building I cut off that eave and we built a clear story like that. And with these eaves, so that the winter and fall sun comes in there. And even there's a wall here, and I put windows. They don't have glass in them. I just put openings going into the girls' room where this sun can spill into that north wall. So it's just a matter of like sitting down and head scratching and working out. There's a solution to the problem. And it's site specific, which makes it tough. But absolutely is the answer. I was going to say something. Shoot. Oh, I know what I was going to say. On passive solar where we live, one thing I would say about it is that it's not the solstices that we should be paying attention to, it's the equinoxes. So you know what I mean? It's not December 21st and June 21st, it's March and September. Let that be your guide on where your eaves, where they come, because those, and September, I'm thinking more like August, because that's the really hot part of our year. And so keep the sun, make sure you're keeping the sun out. Maybe you want, June can be a cool month here. Maybe you do want a little bit of sun in your house in June. But in August, you certainly don't. Support and use edge effects. I believe that's where we were at. Concept number 7, support and use edge effects. Edges, from a technical standpoint on building, edges are tough because those are the interfaces of where the roof meets the wall or where a door. Those are from a technical standpoint. Those are points where you want to really know what you're doing and be careful there. You don't want a door that is a leaky sieve. You don't want a roof line where the insulation didn't come all the way out to where the wall interfaces, and the insulation didn't come out and cover, and so now you've got a thermal bridge there. But I think there's a lot of other. So that's the technical side of it. Using edges, thinking about the edges of our house, the house that I live in, there's a little niche in the back. And it's this microclimate that we can grow things back in this little south-facing niche that we can't grow, that do very well back there, and you can't do anything else. The drip edge of the house, where the water, if you don't have gutters, like we don't, where the water comes down, in planting water-loving species there. Exterior faucets. We've got a leaky exterior faucet, and man, the poppies grow like crazy around that leaky faucet. Just simple stuff. Concept number 8: diversity instead of monoculture. Designing in, I think what came to my mind when diversity instead of monoculture, which has fairly agricultural roots to that. Designing in some redundancy so that you do have a house that is filled with sun in the wintertime, but you've also got a very efficient wood stove. Reclaimed barn wood and timbers and clay and it's a conversation piece if nothing else. But that eclectic approach to building and reclaimed timber, reclaimed materials in general will certainly lead to, there's no monoculture going on there. I would encourage everybody in closing to don't be afraid. Don't let building be a fearful or intimidating thing. And if it is, then it's battle that with research. There's so many good resources out there on how to sites. It's like the YouTube videos on fixing my 1997 Chevy Astro clutch, this part of the clutch. I mean, there's a video for that out there. So, you know, but the hardest part is getting outside and picking up the hammer and starting the project. Then inertia takes over. But this is cottonwood, which I think, growing up in the valley, I think everybody would try to, you know, burn it or throw it away, pile it, get it the heck out of here. Cottonwood, I think, has a remarkable potential as a building product. And so please come and look at this. I put different finishes on. There's like kind of a hand-tuned finish. And this came off the sawmill. It was a big circle mill. So there you can see the marks from the big circle blade. And then I gave that a light sand. But I mean, beautiful. Cottonwood is the strongest weight to ratio North American wood. There are some problems with cottonwood. If it's limby, it's going to have a lot of action wood around those limbs. By action wood, I mean it's going to twist and warp as it cures out. But there's a lot of ways around it, and I would love to build a cottonwood timber frame one. 2-inch cottonwood will air dry in 3 months.
Whenever the sun went down, it's like someone opened up a faucet and I think it stopped.
Yeah, that's right. Water just runs right out of them. No, they're full of water, and especially certain times of year. If you can cut it in the wintertime, when the tree is dormant, it won't have that water, an amazing amount of water. You probably saw stacks of wood at Mark's where he had stickered in between each layer. Yeah, that's really important.
We used to build wagons out of cottonwood because of the weight to strength.
Yeah, yeah. Pack saddles, beds of trail, like even heavy equipment trailers now. Yeah.
How old is that tree, Scott?
Like I said, it was about this big, and it was in the river bottoms, so it's probably 60 years old, maybe. I would guess. Yeah.